Iranian and U.S. officials say a deal to end the West Asia war is now closer than ever. Even mediator Pakistan has expressed optimism that a deal is within reach. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas has shared the details of the deal. And speaking to Iranian state media, Araghchi said the deal will be done in 2 stages. The interim deal would include reopening the Strait of Hormuz and ending the war on the Lebanese front. While the nuclear issue and lifting of sanctions on Iran will be discussed in the 2nd stage, when a final agreement is reached.
These negotiations, which will lead to the end of the war, are envisioned in 2 stages. The first stage is a memorandum of understanding to be signed between Iran and the United States. Then, negotiations for the 2nd stage will begin, and subsequently, in the 2nd stage, we will have a final agreement. We postponed the nuclear issue to the final agreement for various reasons, as it was truly impossible to discuss it under current circumstances. The demands they had were in no way acceptable.
Araghchi also made it clear that Iran will continue to exercise some form of control over the Strait of Hormuz, while U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly demanded that shipping through the strait return to pre-war status. Araghchi stressed that traffic through Hormuz will never be as it was in the past. And on the question of enriched uranium, Araghchi said that only the acceptable solution is the dilution of the enriched uranium inside Iran.
Of course, our position has always been, and this has long been our policy, that if high-level enriched uranium material, particularly the 60% enriched material, is to be addressed, then from our perspective the only acceptable method is its dilution or conversion inside Iran.
The Iranian foreign minister rejected yielding to any pressure or threat from the U.S., saying that Iran never succumbs to pressure. He also accused Israel of attempting to sabotage the deal. And separately, top Iranian negotiator and Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf has called the U.S. to honor commitments made in the deal. In a post on X, Ghalibaf wrote that there should be no ifs and buts, and commitments must be kept by the U.S. Meanwhile, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also confirmed that a final agreed-upon text of the peace deal has been reached. However, the deal has now turned into a narrative warfare. According to the Iranian news agency IRNA, after an initial agreement, Iran and the U.S. will further hold 60 days of talks, with the focus shifting to talks on Iranian nuclear program and uranium enrichment. While Med news agency says that the deal would also see the release of $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets. However, this completely contradicts statements coming from the U.S. officials. A senior White House official who spoke to AFP said that Iran had agreed to dismantle its nuclear program, destroy its enriched uranium stockpile, and reopen Hormuz. And the official also said that no frozen assets will be returned until Iran honors these commitments. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has also said that Tehran will not receive any cash or funds for simply signing a deal or attending a meeting. But he added that if Tehran meets its obligations, economic benefits will follow. Well, with both sides still offering different versions of what has been agreed and what has been left to the future negotiations, it remains to be seen if a deal is signed or it remains as elusive as ever. All right, to discuss more, we're now being joined by Professor James A. Russell from Washington, D.C. He is an emeritus professor at the Naval Postgraduate School. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast with us. Always a pleasure talking to you. Both sides, they say that the deal is closer, and for Tehran, it's the first time that they have actually showed a positive sign. Normally, they do say that there is no deal. Do you see an imminent deal close by, or is this just, especially with the different opinions on the deal, do you see any imminent deal?
I think that your report accurately captures the vagaries, the contradictions, the continued disagreements between the 2 sides on pretty critical issues. the big difference, again, as you highlighted in your report, between this sort of flurry of diplomatic activity and previous ones, is that it's the Iranians themselves who are asserting that a deal may be in the offing. That hasn't happened before. In previous circumstance, it's been Donald Trump who has come up with these assertions that a deal was imminent, when the Iranians have said there's no deal that's imminent. We don't know what he's talking about. So this time around, the Iranians are making these suggestions that there could be a deal in the offing, which I think is a cause for optimism. We should all hope that the two sides are able to reach some kind of agreement and at least agree to a ceasefire and get down to brass tacks on the issues that still divide them, as you outlined in your very cogent report.
Of course, there are many sticking points. There's the Strait of Hormuz, which Trump said it has to open. Iran says it's not going back to the pre-war status. Apart from all these issues, we have the Lebanon issue as well. At this point of time, how do you see the role of Israel? Araghchi says that, of course, Israel is attempting to sabotage the deal. Is the U.S. ally actually hindering this deal?
This is one of the problems of the bargaining framework, by which I mean there are actually three parties in the bargaining framework, and the interests between these three participants are not symmetrical, really, in any way. Israel got the United States to agree with its assessment, this was back 3 months ago, of course, that Iran was just going to fall and was just going to be a matter of murdering a few of the senior Iranian leadership, and it would all, collapse like a house of cards. And when that didn't work, you then had the beginnings of the opening up of divergences between the U.S. and the Israelis. And then the U.S., of course, continuing on with its strategically purposeless bombing of Iran. So here we sit now three months later, and the divergences between the United States and Israel could not be more apparent, although Israel is not a formal party, of course, to these discussions. Israel wants the war between the United States and Iran to continue for as long as possible. And the United States, of course, wants, as this has been clear for the last several weeks, that Donald Trump seeks a way out of the war. So Israel's going to do everything in its power to ensure that the war continues. And the way it can do that, of course, is in Lebanon. And I think you talked about in your report, for example, all of the difficult bilateral issues that face the United States and Iran on the, for example, the sort of procedures to be followed in the Strait of Hormuz. What are we going to do about the enriched uranium? What about the frozen assets? All of these things, of course, have to be dealt with. But of course, outside of all this is the degree to which the United States can exert any meaningful pressure on Israel to stop the war in Lebanon. And this will require President Trump to engage in some very serious heavy lifting, not only with Benjamin Netanyahu, but with the Israeli lobby in Washington, D.C., and the neoconservative Republicans in Congress. And Trump, at least to date, has shown no inclination to want to take on those powerful domestic political forces. So that, to me, is another of the huge uncertainties. Israel has no interest in stopping the war in Lebanon. It's engaged in annexing the southern part of the country.
Right.
They want to keep the war going with Iran for as long as they can.
All right. Well, of course, we'll have to wait and see if this deal happens. Well, good if it happens. Of course, then the 60-day talks, that is, how is that going to be different from the pre-war conditions when the talks were there for nuclear missions and all? Of course, we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us on the broadcast and giving your perspective. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.